Good evening, everyone. Tonight we're diving into a darker journey, an era of plagues, punishments, and pots perpetually simmering. Let's explore what life was truly like in the Middle Ages. Forget the fairy tale castles and noble knights portrayed in films. The truth? You probably wouldn't survive even a single day. So, before you get comfortable, leave a like on the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Comment below where you're watching from and what time it is. It's always fascinating to see where our viewers are tuning in from around the world. Now, turn off the lights, maybe switch on a fan for that soothing background noise, and let's embark on this journey together. Congratulations, you've just awakened in the year 1325. The good news? You're alive. The bad news? So are the fleas. Your bed is essentially a half-rotten straw mattress filled with insects and hay, emitting a barnyard aroma, because incidentally, it was part of a stable until a few months ago. No memory foam, pillows, or Egyptian cotton sheets. Just a wool blanket that hasn't seen water since last winter and now weighs almost as much as a calf due to accumulated dirt. You open your eyes to the sound of the church bell, the medieval alarm. Louder, more aggressive, and definitely less polite. Your home? A wooden shack with a single room, no windows, and an open-concept layout where your family, animals, and domestic insects coexist in the same space. The smell is unforgettable. A mix of stale beer, human sweat, goat, and something you hope isn't mold, but deep down, you know it is. Scented candles. They don't exist, and if they did, they'd melt straight into the dirt floor. You try to stretch and immediately regret it. The air is freezing, and your joints scream. You're 22 years old, which in the Middle Ages places you in middle age. Your spine creaks like a rusty door, and your knees sound like a sack of stones being shaken by a disoriented peasant. Getting out of bed is a gamble. Either the floor is soaked from rain that passed straight through the thatched roof, or it's covered with something the neighbor's chicken left during the night. In any case, your bare feet are now part of the local ecosystem. Privacy? That doesn't exist. The whole family, and perhaps that cousin who never left, is waking up beside you. No bedroom curtain or time for yourself. Everything is shared. Welcome to medieval European mornings, where you're never truly alone. Lice, rats, and 8 other people are always nearby. And that's just the beginning of your day. Believe me, it gets worse. You've managed to escape the miserable pile of straw you call a bed? Congratulations. Now nature is calling, and it's not being gentle, it's screaming. Here's where you start to miss a modern bathroom. No toilet, seat, toilet paper, flush, or even that plunger abandoned in the corner. In the early 1300s, relieving yourself is a social experiment, and sometimes a small public event. If you're a peasant, your bathroom is a bucket behind the house, which is already full because Uncle Wolfstan had a rough night after eating questionable turnips. The smell? Apocalyptic. You hold your breath, do what you have to do, and the cherry on top, throw everything into the street. Yes, into the street. Etiquette dictates shouting something like "Gardy Lou" before dumping it out the window. A legacy from Old French meaning "watch out below." But honestly, no one moves in time. The streets are open sewers, fetid rivers of human feces, animal droppings, and liquids you pray not to identify. If you live in a city with public latrines, lucky you. Except there you sit shoulder to shoulder with complete strangers in a shack where privacy is fiction and ventilation is torture. You might even chat, but avoid deep breaths. Toilet paper? Never even seen it. Most people clean with straw, leaves, rags, moss, or if feeling fancy, a piece of wool. Sometimes nothing, which explains why handshakes weren't exactly popular. And if you live in a castle, must be better, right? Well, sort of. You might have a garderobe, a hole in the wall that dumps your waste straight into the moat. Great idea, except for the fact that enemies sometimes used it as an entry point. Yes, they climbed through the toilet hole. An invasion through... well, you get it. Whether farmer or noble, answering nature's call is a ritual of humiliation. Cold, public, risky, and always disgusting. A slip on a wet stone, and you fall face first into the worst kind of mud possible. And you haven't even brushed your teeth yet, but we'll get there. You've survived the bathroom, you deserve a reward, right? Maybe a warm, tasty, and comforting breakfast? Forget it. This is medieval Europe. Comfort is a legend. Breakfast, if we can call it that, is depressing. Forget scrambled eggs, noisy coffee machines, or any hint of avocado toast. You sit or squat near the fire before a wooden bowl with something that looks like it was scraped off a boot sole. Welcome to your daily ration of pottage. A thick stew made with whatever's available: grains, roots, vegetables, and if you're lucky, some beans. It simmers in the same pot for days, sometimes weeks. New ingredients are thrown on top of the old ones. It's not a recipe, it's an ongoing edible project. Beside it, a piece of bread hard enough to deflect arrows, made with rye or barley flour, often reinforced with sawdust, ground acorns, or other innovations because wheat is for the rich. This bread isn't your friend. You don't cut it. You negotiate with it. Want something to drink? No orange juice or plant-based milk, you drink beer, that's right, at 6 in the morning. Why? Because the water is infested with parasites and filth. So the day starts with ale, weak beer, low alcohol, high chance of not killing you. Children drink it too. No one likes it, but at least it doesn't kill immediately. Want meat or cheese? Forget it. That's for Sundays, religious holidays, and only if the feudal lord is in a good mood. Most peasants eat meat a few times a year. Fresh fruits? Only in season and if they haven't turned into wine yet. Spices? Only if you're royalty. A bit of pepper costs more than your monthly salary. Salt is so valuable it's kept locked away. You chew your gritty bread, swallow your watered-down beer, and try not to think about the rat that might have passed through your porridge pot during the night. Breakfast doesn't give you energy. It just happens to you. Now that you're properly underfed, it's time to start working. Because your life depends on it, literally. You've worked all day under the burning sun, blisters on your feet and fire in your spine. Congrats. Now it's lunchtime, or rather, the reheated remains of that morning's gruel. Don't expect variety. It's the same thin stew, with a slim chance of a salted pork scrap left over from the last festival. Maybe a boiled turnip if it's spring. Maybe a hard onion if it's winter. Maybe nothing if it's Tuesday. You eat with your hands or a wooden spoon everyone shares. Forks don't exist. Knives? Only if you're a man, and carrying your own strapped to your belt. Plates? Just cracked clay bowls. Cups? A mug, maybe a hollowed horn. Hygiene? Forget it. Washing your hands is a privilege. Washing your bowl between meals is optional. And once you're done, no rest. Time to pray. Because if there's one thing medieval Europe has in abundance, it's religion. The Catholic Church is everything. It rules your calendar, your festivals, your community, your soul. You pray when you wake, when you eat, when you sleep, when you plow the land, when you bury the dead. Skipping Mass isn't an option. It's your one shot at a cleaner soul. Heaven is the promise. Hell, the constant threat. Priests hold real power. They're spiritual guides, political voices, and local elites. They live better than many lords. They speak Latin, which nobody else understands. So whatever they say becomes law. The Bible? Also in Latin. Reading? Only them. Interpreting? Also them. You just listen, obey, and donate. You pay your tithe, help repair the church, sit through rituals you don't understand, and hope it keeps you safe from plague, hunger, cold, and sin. Questioning? Unthinkable. Heretics are burned, literally. Beyond faith, there's fear. Fear of the devil, witches, Jews, Moors, Vikings, the French, the English, depending on where you live. Anything could get you accused. A strange dream, a black cat, a lone woman, a failed harvest. You finish your prayer, glance up at the sky, and hope God gives you a break. But the next plague is already on its way. Sickness is everywhere. The flu kills. A scratch gets infected. A rat carries the plague. Doctors? They exist, but you can't afford them. And even if you could, they don't know much. Bloodletting, leeches, and prayer are the go-to treatments. Diagnosis? Anything. Cure? Nothing reliable. You could die from dysentery, tetanus, smallpox, typhoid, or even a stubborn earache. No vaccines, no antibiotics, no real hope. And if you don't die, maybe you lose a leg, an eye, or live in constant pain until your already short life ends. You stumble home as night falls. No electricity, just candles, torches, and the moon, if it feels generous. You trip through the mud, dodge loose pigs, clutch your growling stomach, and enter your reeking shack. Inside, your family squeezes together to sleep. Everyone in one room, under filthy blankets on sweaty straw. Kids coughing, baby crying, grandpa groaning, rats scurrying. You lie down and feel the straw stab your back. You stare at the roof and think, survived another day. And tomorrow it all starts again. Welcome to the Middle Ages, where survival is a daily miracle and life is just a slow wait for death. You finished your tasteless medieval meal? Great. Now it's time to get dressed. Though honestly, it won't help much. Your entire wardrobe consists of one single piece of clothing. Yes, one. A coarse wool tunic or a linen shirt you've been wearing every day for months, maybe years. Seasonal fashion, never heard of it. The rule is simple. Wear it until it falls apart, or until your skin does. Underwear? Only if you're lucky. Maybe an apron underneath if you're really fortunate. Otherwise, it's rough wool against bare skin, sweaty, itchy, and stitched together by someone who had no concept of comfort. Washing machine? Nope. Soap? Forget it. Laundry service? Imagine. Your clothes are stiff, stained, and smell like a compost pile abandoned in a pigsty. Even if you wanted to wash them, it's a whole ordeal. First, haul water from the well. Then boil it over fire, scrub the tunic on a board with ashes or natural soda, wring it out and hang it to dry, assuming the sun shows up at all this season. And your shoes? If you even own a pair, they're raw leather, stitched loosely, offering less support than a soggy sandal. Most peasants just go barefoot, through mud, manure, shards, and puddles of plague. The result? Your skin hates you. You itch constantly. Fleas, lice, and bed bugs live on your body. Everyone has them. Nobles, monks, children, walking around like portable insect farms. And nobody cares. You could be scratching your armpit with a wooden spoon in the middle of a chat with the priest, and it's just another day. Your skin's raw. Your scalp's a battlefield. Break out in a rash? Oh well. No doctor, no ointment, no diagnosis. Just keep suffering. If you're lucky and infection stays away, great. The itch becomes your companion for the next 6 months. Now that you're dressed in despair and wrapped in discomfort, it's time to head out and start your day. And of course, give a cheerful morning smile. Well, maybe not that either. Because smiling in the Middle Ages is risky. Not emotionally, dentally. Toothbrush? No. Toothpaste? Never. Floss? Too futuristic. Oral hygiene? No one cares. Some chew on sticks or rinse with wine or vinegar, but for the most part your teeth are on their own. And they're losing. If you're over 25, your smile looks like a haunted house. Cavities reign. Gums are swollen. Those stains? Not food. It's decay. There's more rot in your mouth than in a forgotten garden. Sugar isn't common yet, but it's starting to show up among the rich, in cakes and as a luxury. Result? The nobles rot their teeth faster. The poor manage just fine with coarse bread, gritty porridge, and years of forced chewing. Toothache? Welcome. It's like the weather, always there. That dull, nagging pain that makes you pray, drink, or yank your own tooth out. Literally. That was the treatment. Dentists didn't exist. The guy pulling teeth was your barber. Yes, the same one who cuts your hair, sticks a metal hook in your mouth, and rips out the problem by candlelight. No anesthesia, of course. Infected tooth? Get ready for fever, swelling, and if the infection doesn't kill you, weeks of agony. No antibiotics. A simple toothache could mean death. That's right. What sends you to the pharmacy today could end your life back then. And if you're single, your breath is a weapon. No one's judging your smile. They're judging your land and your livestock. In short, your mouth is a battlefield, and it's losing. Now that your teeth are throbbing, let's go. Work awaits, and it's going to break your back. If you're like 90% of the population, your job is simple. Survive. You're a peasant. That means you work the land of a lord who probably doesn't know your name. You wake with the sun and only stop when it disappears. Your tools? A wooden hoe, a rusty sickle, and whatever bones haven't snapped yet. Weekends don't exist. Punching in? No such thing. There's only the rising and falling of the sun, 6 days a week. Sunday is rest, but only if you're not harvesting, being raided, or praying feverishly for your gangrenous toe to stop throbbing. The labor? Brutal. Fields are tilled by hand, or with oxen, if you're one of the lucky few. You dig trenches, sow seeds, rip out weeds, and haul water until your spine curves like a question mark. Tired? No one cares. Mental health? Never heard of it. If you're a woman, congratulations. You work the field, raise children, cook, clean, spin wool, feed animals, and pretend your husband's lice infestation isn't crawling into your side of the bed. Children? They start working at 5. No school, no toys. Just a tiny rake and the dream of maybe not dying from a cold. If you're not a farmer, maybe you're a blacksmith, a tanner, or a cooper. Congrats. Now you handle fire, chemicals, or animal guts all day in suffocating sheds. Your wage? Survival. Your benefits? Occasional bleeding. Break a bone? Oh well. Fever? Drink warm ale and carry on. Stopping? Not an option. Don't work, don't eat, and someone else takes your place. You grip your hoe, ignore the blisters, and keep digging. Because in the Middle Ages, a job isn't a path. It's a slow march toward the end. Waking up in a medieval world is a daily reminder that knowledge is a privilege, a luxury reserved for nobles, monks, or the odd lunatic who happens to know how to read. You're illiterate. The only thing you might know how to write is your name, if you even have one, and even that's doubtful. Books, as expensive as horses, incredibly rare, handcrafted on parchment made from sheepskin. They only exist in churches where no one is allowed to touch them. And if you do, it's heresy. Translating the Bible? A crime. God's word is only to be read in Latin by old men who fear a bath more than they fear hell. The nearest school? About 300 kilometers away, inside a monastery with rules like don't breathe loudly, don't ask questions, and of course, don't question God. Because thinking too much is dangerous. The church holds more power than any king, and any toothache, storm, or failed harvest is your fault, or rather your sins. Feel like complaining? Go ahead. But be careful. That could be heresy, and heresy is punished with fire, literally. You get arrested, tied to a stake, and burned alive. So God can judge your soul. The audience? The whole village, holding stale bread and scratching their flea-bitten necks. Justice is as random as the harvest. Steal a loaf of bread? Lose a hand. Insult the local lord? Rot in a dungeon? Accused of witchcraft? They wait to see if you float. Sink. Innocent. Float. Guilty. Either way, you're dead. Laws are oral, subjective, and enforced with an axe. Judges are priests, soldiers, or whoever has the biggest sword. Appeals? Only to divine mercy. And good luck with that. Want justice? It doesn't exist. Want freedom? That's a 21st century idea. In the Middle Ages, freedom means a kind, feudal lord who only takes half your food instead of all of it. Religion rules everything. From birth to the grave, you belong to the church. Baptized, confessed, punished, and buried by it. Even in death, you still pay. Yes, there are taxes on salvation. And if you don't pay, your soul ends up in purgatory, or worse, in the forgotten corners of the cemetery, where no one prays for you. And all of this? Just a Monday. In the Middle Ages, festivals are few and far between, but when they happen, they're a chaotic mix of mockery and superstition. Picture a grand feast at the castle. The food, a luxury. But you'd be surprised at the amount of undercooked chicken, pork fat, and wine that tastes more like vinegar than anything divine. The smell? Imagine a perfume brewed from a battalion of soldiers after a long campaign. Still, it's all welcome. Hunger and disease are constant companions. Ah, the dancing. Desperate joy and motion. frantic dancers spinning to the tune of out-of-tune flutes and drums that sound like angry toddlers got their hands on cookware. The nobles dance with exaggerated grace, while the peasants, they must join in, of course. Carefully, though, lest a misstep land them with a broken neck or tied to the village pillory. And after the feast comes the wedding, the bleakest event masquerading as celebration. Marriage isn't about love, not even close. It's about security, alliances, and above all, inheritance. A noble's marriage, a treaty, a peasant's marriage, a life sentence. The bride usually has less say than a hen in the market. She's handed off to an older, richer, or more politically useful man. Her feelings? Irrelevant. She might be beautiful, but beauty doesn't save her from being a pawn on the medieval chessboard. Where families are players, land is the prize, and death is a common outcome of poor strategy. And as for sex? It's a duty, not a pleasure. If you're a woman, your sole job is to produce heirs for the noblemen in question. Can't do that? Get ready to be dismissed, demoted, or worse, shipped off to a convent where silence and prayers become your lifelong cellmates. Meanwhile, the cycle of death never stops. Dying in the Middle Ages isn't poetic, it's monotonous. There's no peace, no dignity, just a tired resignation. You can die from anything: plague, hunger, disease, or war. And yes, old age, though reaching it makes you a walking miracle. The cemetery? It's more business than peace. The rich get lavish tombs and crypts that cost more than a peasant earns in a year. The poor? A mass grave. You're dumped in like waste. Bones are moved around to make space for more bodies. Eternal rest? A fantasy for the wealthy. A bitter joke for everyone else. And what comes after death? A quick burial? No real ceremony. The priest mutters a few words no one listens to. Who remembers you? Maybe your children, if they're still alive. But even that's uncertain. And so, death becomes just another gear in the medieval cycle of life. The only certainty in a world built on pain and misfortune. Everything else? Just the space between one miserable party and the next impending disaster. Life in the Middle Ages is a game of extremes. On one side, the opulence of the nobles. On the other, the misery of the peasants. A noble has a castle, vast lands, an army of servants to do his bidding, plenty of food, and the comforting promise of never starving. Though, as we'll see, that's no guarantee of good health. The peasant? Well, the peasant has a patch of land to work, backbreaking labor, and nothing but empty promises of a better future, assuming the plague doesn't get to him first. Nobles don't have many worries, apart from which silk robe to wear, or whether the next banquet will impress the visiting duke. They hunt for sport, not survival, and gamble their lives in absurd political feuds, all in pursuit of more wealth and influence. The lives of peasants? Irrelevant. Who cares about a dirt-covered farmer who can't even read his own name? Meanwhile, the peasant wakes at dawn and works until dusk, plowing fields or tending livestock. And what's the reward? A bowl of gruel, some stale bread, and the ever-present threat of crushing taxes or the whims of a feudal lord. Make a mistake? Punishment is swift. Torture, prison, or, if you're lucky, just a sleepless night out in the cold. Farm work isn't just grueling, it's a gamble. If the weather turns, the crops fail and hunger follows. But who notices? The noble watches from his stone tower, far removed, completely indifferent. And medicine? Either non-existent or worse than the illness. If a peasant falls ill, there are only two options: wait for death or pray to an obscure saint. Nobles can afford doctors, but more often than not, those doctors prescribe leeches or rituals that do more harm than healing. But what truly separates these two worlds is justice. When a noble commits a crime, which usually just means getting caught, he pays a fine and carries on. When a peasant does the same, whether stealing a chicken or killing an abusive lord, the punishment is swift and brutal. That is, if he even survives the trial. Religion? That too is a luxury for the rich. Nobles enjoy private blessings from high-ranking clergymen who assure them a seat in heaven. The peasant, on the other hand, is buried under layers of religious fear. He prays out of terror, not faith, and hopes for a miracle that will never come. The peasant's life is a constant battle to survive. He may be kind, hardworking, and faithful, but none of that matters. In the end, he's just a pawn in a much larger game, played by people who don't even know his name. And the nobles? They continue their days of comfort and pleasure, oblivious to the fact that their luxury is built on the suffering of others. That is the harsh truth of the Middle Ages, a world where noble privilege knows no bounds and peasant misery has no end. And if you're a peasant, your only real hope is to die quickly, just to escape it all. And if death doesn't come soon, then you better get used to the routine. Labor, hunger, fear, repeat. No dreams, no ambitions, no upward path. You're born in the mud, you live in the mud, and you die in the mud. And the only people who notice your absence are the ones who now have to shovel more dung because you are gone. You want to complain? Good luck. Your voice carries no weight. Speak out and you'll be labeled a troublemaker. Persist and you'll be branded a heretic, a criminal, or worse, a witch. And witches? Well, they don't get trials. They get fires. The church doesn't help. It watches. It judges. It taxes. Every child you have must be baptized. Every confession must be paid for. Every sin has a price. You sin by working on a Sunday. Pay. You sin by being poor. Pray harder. Starving. That's probably your fault too. God must be testing you or punishing you. There is no escape. You can't move to a city. You need permission. You can't change your trade. You don't have one. You can't learn. There's no school. And even if there were, who would feed your family while you sit around reading Latin? You think of running away, maybe joining a monastery. But even that is just another cage. Only this one has candles and silence. You'll spend your days copying books you can't understand, praying for hours on end and eating watery soup in stone-cold silence. And if you break a rule, flogging, public humiliation, isolation, holiness through suffering, they say. And so, you stay where you are, stuck, forgotten, just one more nameless body breaking itself to hold up the fragile illusion of civilization. Your Lord rides past on horseback and doesn't even look down. To him, you're not a person, you're a tool, replaceable, disposable. And when you break, you'll be buried without a name, and your children will take your place. Because in the Middle Ages, legacy isn't T about what you build or who you are, it is about who owns your name after you are dead. And for a peasant, that name was never really yours to begin with. Welcome to the Middle Ages, a world where power is inherited, life is borrowed, and death is the only certainty. And yet somehow you keep going. Not because you believe things will get better, but because stopping means starving. You wake up every day not with hope, but with habit. You move your aching limbs, ignore the sores on your feet, swallow the hunger, and pray that the rain doesn't wash away the crops again. You're not living, you're enduring. Maybe once a year a traveling bard comes through the village, singing songs about kings and dragons, battles and glory. For a moment, the children stare wide-eyed, and the old men remember a time when they almost believed in something. But then the bard leaves, taking the stories with him, and leaving only silence, sweat, and soil behind. The only tales you truly believe are the ones carved into the faces of the people around you. Women aged by 30 at 16, men with hands like cracked leather, and children who don't know how to smile without flinching. Your entertainment? Gossip? Superstition? Maybe a puppet show if someone isn't too busy dying. Laughter exists, but it's bitter. Joy is fleeting. And love? Love is a luxury no one can afford. Marriages are arrangements, children are labor, and affection is something passed in a glance before the next chore begins. Still you cling to small comforts. A piece of bread that's not stale, a moment of sun on your back, a neighbor who doesn't die this week. You learn to find meaning in misery because that's all you're given. But deep down you know this life doesn't change. There's no golden tomorrow. The future is just more of the present. Colder, harder, and possibly lonelier. And when your time comes, when your breath turns shallow and the fever takes hold, no one writes your name in a book. No one carves it in stone. Your grave is shallow, your shroud is old cloth, and your legacy is a dirt path someone else will walk barefoot tomorrow. Because in the Middle Ages, you're not remembered. You're replaced. And the world moves on. How what a joy it is, this medieval delight, where baths are rare and lice sleep tight. The scent, pure anguish, sweat infused, a fragrance so fierce, even stones feel abused. A straw bed reeks, yet it's a peasant's prize, with rats on the pillow and hens on the rise. Caught a cough? Better build your tomb. Antibiotics haven't yet left the womb. The toilet? Oh, a daily scatological quest. With a bucket, no flush, and an odor fest. Miss your neighbor's gardy-loo cry? Enjoy the surprise of poop from the sky. Breakfast? A sketchy, suspicious goo with chunks of something you'd rather not chew. And bread so hard it doubles as a mace, washed down with beer. Water's a disgrace. That smile, a gum fiesta, red and raw, with teeth in retreat from medieval law. The barber? He cuts hair and yanks teeth too, a multitasking champ in a bloodstained shoe. And fashion? One tunic for all 4 seasons, filthy and torn, breeding fungal legions. Shoes? For nobles, or those with luck to spare. The rest walk barefoot, through dung, unaware. The kids? Oh, the tiny peasant elite, born with a rake and no school seat. Playtime means rocks or bugs in a jar, and prayer's not to end up someone's dinner by far. And speaking of prayer, the church rules all. Saves you, damns you, or makes you crawl. The priest's a rock star, preaches Latin with flair. No one understands him, but dare not stare. Disease? It's hiding in bread, air, and well. Fever? Drink wine. The plague? Pray you don't smell. Bloodletting cures what it doesn't kill. But hey, have faith and hope God will. And after a day of labor and grief, you crawl to your straw with lice as relief. Cuddle your fleas, kiss the boil on your knee, and thank the sky you're still able to pee. Because in the Middle Ages, just breathing's a feat. But thinking too much will get you burned in the street. So eat your onion, toast your lukewarm brew, and snuggle with scabies. That's life for you. But tell me now, you time-traveling fool, if the past was this rough, why romanticize cruel? Why do some still long for sword and throne, yet cry over bills and bad Wi-Fi at home? Do we really want to rewind life's game? Or is nostalgia just dressed up shame? Think hard. Would you survive this twisted saga? Or does your Middle Ages end the moment you lose Wi-Fi in the plaza?